Hey, I'm Tom, creator of Axiom Verge, and you're listening to Video Game Wundercast.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the very first edition of Wundercast Review. I'm your host, Rocky Linderman, and today we have a stunning treat for you, a one-on-one interview with the sole creator of Axiom Verge, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Tom Happ. Tom has spent the past 5 years forging what I believe will be one of this year's greatest games. But before we sit down with Mr. Happ, the Video Game Wundercast crew will go over our personal reviews of Axiom Verge. Joining me today, I have Destro the Destroyer.
Yo, what's up?
And to my left, Wyatt the Wise.
Heyo.
So, we were lucky enough to get review copies of Axiom Verge. We've been playing it for the past month, just about. Where do we begin with this game?
It's just incredible. I mean, that's how you begin this. There's no other way to say it.
It's a Metroid successor. Like, not just a clone.
Yes.
It's not just a clone. Like, it's definitely, it takes it and it runs with it. And it gives its own personal flair, its own personal twist to the Metroid spirit. And to everyone who enjoys the old Metroid games, the 2Ds, like, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, even the older ones, you're going to love this game.
You should pick it up.
Yes.
Yes, $20 is too little. You should buy it for $40.
I would pay $60 for this.
Yeah, it's a full-fledged game. I think I put like 20 hours into it or so.
I think you still don't even have everything done.
No.
There's so many secrets in this game. And there's just stuff hidden everywhere.
Stuff even we haven't been able to find.
Yeah, there's things you don't even know what it's going to do. Like, there's a password thing in the start menu, and we have no idea what that's for.
No idea what to do with that
Can we
shit.
get the Prima Game Strategy Guide for like $19.99?
Yeah. But like I said at the top of the show, this is a review edition of Video Game Wundercast. So we're going to do something that we haven't done before. We're introducing a review scale. So our review scale will go after the World of Warcraft model.
World
of Warcraft.
Warcraft.
It's brilliant. But anyways, so at the bottom of the scale, we have a common. Mid, kind of a little step above the bottom, we have uncommon. Then it goes rare, epic, legendary. So the highest rating we can give a game is legendary. But the only way a game gets legendary is if all three of us agree that it's a legendary.
It's gotta be
tough. And it's gonna be very tough.
Now, I personally am pretty high on Axiom Verge. We're all pretty high on it. But I carried it to that next level, and I think the game's legendary. Now, here's my case for it. This is really the highest compliment I can think of to give the game, which Destry touched on it earlier. It's not a Metroid clone. It's a Metroid successor. This game, if Nintendo ever comes out with another 2D Metroid, this is the game everyone's going to look to judge that game by. They're going to say, is this Metroid as good as Axiom Verge? And that's why I think it's a legendary.
Especially coming from a single-man team.
It wasn't a team, it's a single man.
Yeah.
It's the single person has made a game to match up and do better. Well, I mean, to go toe-to-toe with Metroid games.
Definitely go toe-to-toe. I mean, you're completely right as a Metroid successor. I don't want to spoil anything. This is a review. The way he spun it, the way he changed the Metroid formula to adapt to his game was brilliant for one, and it works so well.
Yes, I agree with that completely right there.
For myself personally, on our rating scale, yes, it's a Metroid successor, and I agree with everything we've already said. I only felt it was a epic, not a legendary. Even though it is a Metroid successor, it doesn't do anything brand new. If it did something completely new, and like I said, it's amazing that this one man did this whole game by himself, and it shows up in the credits, developed solely by Tom Happ. That's crazy awesome. But I think that's more of like a development feat. As like a development feat, that's like beyond legendary. That's like super top tier Teal and Borderlands legendary. But for the game itself, it does take different spin on Metroid, and it has new stuff that makes it different, but it's still kind of based on that same Metroid formula. That's why I don't think it deserves a legendary. It's just nothing so brand new.
I'm gonna go with saying it's an epic. I don't even know if I want to say I'm saying it's an epic because here are my reasons why it's not a legendary. I don't want to do that because that would be saying a lot of negatives about the game, but it's like, I don't know, it's just something to me, I loved it. I enjoyed it, it was great. But with Axiom Verge, though, this game is definitely epic for me because it's, when you jump in, like right as soon as you turn it on, Like, you guys, this is that's gonna be the amazing part. As soon as you buy this game and you load it up, that music is gonna instantly
It's
put
so
you
good.
The music,
you into
the music. If we were judging it music alone, that got a legendary because by himself he did this. He composed. I don't know how he composed it, but he did it himself.
It's gonna the atmosphere that's created right as soon as you get to the menu screen is gonna put you right into it. You're gonna love it. I'm telling you. And as soon as you drop into the world, the atmosphere of just the music, the style, what's going on around you, it definitely puts you right into the middle of this world.
Yeah. You're in this crazy sci-fi, like, adventurous exploration wonder cave right from the beginning.
Yeah.
If you think back to like the original Metroid on NES, it just drops you in and you go. You have no instruction. Think of like that for this game. That was one of the cool things I think all of us agreed on was, there's no instructions. Here you go, learn how to play it.
Yeah.
It's no baby level.
Definitely,
Here you go.
That's one of the best parts about it. There are no tutorials. Like, as soon as you pick up a gun, it's going to, of course, tell you how to it'll show on the screen just how to equip it and gives you an overview of this is what the gun does. Just a tiny, one sentence. But that's it. Because you don't have to sit there and be like some stupid little annoying voiced fairy telling you, now you got to go and do this. And then when this enemy starts to do this, you got to do that. None of that. Everything you do, you learn to do it yourself. And you're going to enjoy that. No tutorials.
And I'm going to say this. That's us. That's the three of us. I'll throw this out there. I'll be the devil's advocate on this one. I don't know if everyone's going to love it like that because people are, and how many modern games nowadays do that? Not many.
No. I applaud it for it, though. And I think it's rare and it's special for a game to come out in 2015 that doesn't hold your hand the whole way through and doesn't force feed you lore, but it's all still in there if you want it. I think the only other game, like you were saying, that really does that this well is Dark Souls.
Yeah, there's only a very few amount of times you've something that would be considered an exposition dump, but it's not really a dump.
I mean, it's just dialogue.
There's a couple of times where it actually tells you the story of what's going on. A little bit. It fills you in a little bit as you go, but it's a good amount. It's not like, dear God, I've got to listen to the ghost tell me everything about all these other people that just were here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Compared to Destiny, it does a good job of storytelling. Yeah.
You can actually find the lore in the game instead of having to pull up your computer and look it up online.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's legendary for me because, like what I said about the Metroid game, there's not a single point in this game that I can find and point at and say, yeah, that's a flaw. That's something I wish was a little different. I love the music in the game. I love the exploration in the game. I love the power-ups and the weapons. I think they're totally unique and interesting. And every time I got something new in the game, I was super pumped to see what it was going to do.
That's one thing we haven't spoken of yet is the power-ups are incredible. The variety you get, there's zones in it where you think it's like, okay, I must get a morph ball or something in this game. But what you actually get is so new and it's new and different. And that definitely, that knocked it up when I started playing. I was like, that would have made it a rare for me. It still just stays at epic, even though there's nothing really I can point to in the game. The only thing I thought when I was playing is I feel like you die too easy some points. Like, I'm going around the entire world, and there's a lot of times I'm just dying trying to get from A to B. But that's just because I rushed through it. If I slowed down, it was okay. But the reason I don't think it doesn't get legendary for me, and this is one thing that I think our rating scale is actually going to kind of flaw on, is I think a legendary really is going to be the lasting power of this stuff. How it affects what comes afterward. Like how we can say, the Metroid's got to stack up to this. But my fear for Axiom Verge is this game is absolutely amazing. Everyone who listens to us should buy it. You should buy this. It's an amazing game. But it's also made by one man, an indie developer. It's not going to get I never had even heard of this game until we just randomly saw it at a GameStop. That's where I think I'm afraid it's not going to have that lasting power that Metroid has. Is you say Metroid, everyone knows what you're talking about. 5 years from now, you're saying the next Metroid game you got to compare it to this, but who actually is going to? I fear that Axiom Verge is not going to be able to make the big splash it deserves.
I don't know. I disagree. I think it's got a lot of backing from Sony, and they are pushing it in that Spring Fever sale. It's been highlighted for this entire month as it's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
Sony is pushing it, and
Sony's behind the indies nowadays too, like a lot.
They're behind their indies. B, they're behind this game itself, and also with this game, with it being such a solid game, they're going to want a sequel with it. right as soon as we see when it comes out, how it comes out, like as far as selling and stuff goes. I hope it does well. I think it will, just because the way it looks. It looks good. It's very pretty, even just looking at the screenshots of it, like the face of the robot.
Oh, yeah.
The robot.
Can't say her name.
Yeah. the face of the like just that screenshot where you see of it anywhere.
That's the very first thing I saw was in a Game Informer. They had a little square of the main Axiom Verge logo with her face and the little guy standing in the corner, and I was like, fuck, that looks awesome, and I wanted to read about it. I wanted to know more about it just off of that little thing of the graphics.
I think it's going to do well, because, the way I even feel right now, like, the games I keep talking about, Children of Morta, like Moon Hunters, they're made by more than one person. But you still don't see about them a lot of places anywhere. But they're not out yet. But I'm stoked about it. There's a lot of other people who are really stoked about it. And I know that you and I, Wyatt, did not hear about this much before it came out, but Rocky did. And if Rocky's stoked about it, of course there's other people that have heard about it.
Well, like I said, no way in any... And if, I not want to seem like I want it to fail. I don't. I want it to succeed. I think it needs to be shouted out from the heavens that this game is so amazing. And I know it feels like I want to call it a legendary. It really does. Like, I love it. There's nothing wrong with it. I feel like I want to call it legendary, but I just can't. I can't. I really feel like our legendaries, and this kind of goes into the meta of ourselves, but I really feel like our legendaries are going to be, like, it could become a legendary to me. Like,
you think the second one.
With Legacy, like, we've talked about what would we call legendaries off show.
Yeah.
I said Halo 1 for what it has done after launch. What it has brought to the genre, not just in that, but also the gaming as a whole. That is what makes it to a legendary to me. Axiom Verge, as I said, it's definitely something you want. This is definitely very Metroid-esque. That's the first thing I thought of. I picked up Fusion because we only had one review copy, and I'm dying to play Axiom Verge. We're all sharing it, and it's hard to, I gotta get my fix somewhere, so I picked up Metroid Fusion. It's so the same, but it's not, and it is different.
So how would you rate it after you've gone back and played Fusion while also playing Axiom Verge?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought of it that way. I would almost say Fusion, it's hard to say because they're so similar. That's the thing is, Axiom Verge, and without spoiling anything, it's different, but it also kind of plays the same. It's very so similar. It's hard to say. I couldn't tell you which one I like more. Axiom Verge is newer. Metroid Fusion holds your hand a lot. I guess maybe I would say Axiom Verge just because Fusion, you always have the computer telling you where to go. Go here, go there. Axiom Verge is like, have fun. We're all 10 plus hours in, and we're still trying to find these little secret rooms. And I don't think I can beat Metroid Fusion in probably 8 or 9 hours and get most of the items. Of course, I don't know what my first playthrough was.
I think Verge is just a very special game, and I think when you were saying as far as what its legacy is going to be, I think it's just as important to the Metroidvania genre as Halo is to first-person shooters.
We have not seen any others in that style for a while.
Guacamelee was probably the last really good one.
Yeah.
It might become a legendary for me, but as of this moment, today, at whatever time we're recording this is, 8:01 30th, it's just an epic. And maybe in a little bit I'll go to legendary, but because there's nothing wrong with it. I cannot stress enough, this is the game to go buy this month.
When we are going to sit down way later in the year and talk about Game of the Year, this is going to be in the conversation.
This is going to be on the list.
Yeah,
no doubt about
easily.
it. This is easily going to be on the list. And, we've already said this year's going to be really good for gaming, but this is, it's March. Mm-hmm. This is definitely going to be in our top 10.
Yeah,
no
easily.
doubt about it.
For me, it's going to be probably the worst year of all time as far as trying to pick a number one.
God, yeah.
I got Bloodborne, I got this game, and I got Metal Gear on the same fucking
Zelda.
year. And Zelda.
And Star Fox.
We've said it before, we've said it before. This was a hell of a year to be a gamer.
Yeah. The consoles are finally hitting their stride, which is good.
I would still probably keep my vote as epic. Like I said earlier, it's still kind of unfair to say, it's epic because it's amazing, but these are the bad things about it. The why I don't want to say it's amazing. And it sounds bad saying it, but I'll go ahead and knock off the negatives. I don't know. Sometimes the sound editing itself didn't, I don't know. It wasn't always 100%, even with the monsters. Sometimes that's just weird. I don't know exactly how to explain it. That's just how I felt. The circle button piece of gear. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to spoil anything. Circle button piece of gear was
tricky. That is a very learning curve.
It's tricky to use.
Piece of equipment.
It's a little frustrating sometimes.
It's not very necessary later on in the game either. Like, you have other tools that you can use that are much easier to use.
You say that?
Than that.
You've said that. Me, I use it all the time.
Yeah, you do use it a lot when you play.
Because for me, it feels like you guys rush through it, and I have more. I think I have like almost as much maps. If you knocked out like the map percentage, and I haven't even beaten the game yet. And I've got all these upgrades, and I've taken my time, and so it's taken me a lot longer to get these higher pieces of equipment. And so I still use this other one. I got so used to using it. I'm used to using it now, and I don't use the newer stuff yet. What we're talking about that was my worst. I thought that was the worst upgrade just because of its learning curve. It's very wonky.
Yeah,
like the controls on it. That if anything negative about it, it's that one piece of equipment. It is just because it's wonky. That does not take away at all from me for it. It's just a little thing to do.
Yeah.
If we were going off, if we're going off a 1 to 10 scale, this was a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and see, to me, a 10 out of 10 should be a legendary. I'm not going to give a game a 10 in my mind unless it is perfect. If I can look at this game and sit down and think about it and not come up with a single flaw, like the music is so driving and so good. I haven't heard a soundtrack like this probably since Hotline Miami that's as good as this. The power-ups are insane, incredible.
The soundtrack even reminded me of like Swords and Sorcery.
Yeah.
How good that soundtrack was with that.
Art style's amazing. The way you use enemies in the environment with the glitch gun and stuff like that. I would say
the glitching stuff. It's great. Like, it's really cool. I felt like it could have done a little more. It could have been used more. It could have been a little more creative stuff to it.
How far do you want to push the glitch, though, just because... At what point do you... Because we're already trying to blast through walls all the time and, do all this stuff and look like a crazy idiot in a room, just trying to find something.
I think, because it's this very specific spot to mention, but I don't know if I want to do that with the spoilers. With the ones that you can... The ones that sit inside the walls, you can turn them... Like, when you glitch them, they go shooting across the screen and the rocks come out behind them.
It's an enemy. Like,
basically how they change the environment. Like, if there were more things that changed the environment, even just a little bit, like, even there was some, like, there was one, the little circle guys that, when you pop them, they broke rocks.
Yeah. And the other guys that shot lasers, the white lasers.
Yeah.
But definitely more environmental interactions would be...
Like, I thought that was cool that could have done that. I felt like it could have taken it a little farther. Done a little bit
There's
more.
only a few spots that it happens anyway.
It happens a couple times. I would like to have seen that happen more.
I was a really big fan of the boss design, too. I thought the bosses were very cool.
Incredible.
The bosses were beautiful. Beautiful. As far as pixel art, it's like, man, it's beautiful pixel art because it's so intricate. Just look at them whenever you stop and fight these bosses, you're going to be like, oh, this is beautiful. I'm dead.
They're all different. They're all different, too.
Yeah.
It's very cool designs in a lot of them. One of the later bosses I thought was kind of generic to me, but even it had like little specialty things that kind of set it apart from other boss kind of. When you're playing the game, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But even it had kind of a little special little trick it did that kind of set it apart from other bosses in this kind of style. Going back to saying 10 out of 10 is legendary, I think me and you, because we're such avid WoW players, we see that legendary as something so high nothing can attain it. And I know you.
So is it fair for us to say? Is it fair for us to rate things on the legendary of that scale?
When I think of legendary, though, like I said, it's what it does for everything, not just like the game itself,
but how it affects the industry around it.
Yes.
And see, for me, it's like every game that's going to come out in this style after this game is going to be compared to Axiom Verge.
So is it too early?
This is the standard.
Is it too early for us to call it legendary, though?
It might be.
What if that doesn't happen? So what if?
In my mind, that's already happened.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I'm going to compare.
And that's what I said.
Like
I said, one day I might call this a legendary game. But I mean, if we got 5 different markings and we got a 5 out of 5 scale. This is definitely a 5 out of 5. But to call it a legendary title to me just feels wrong. I don't know. That's our weird, crazy minds doing this. But and as we've said before, pick up this game.
Yeah.
This is worth way more than $20.
Despite the stupid argument we're having about should we call it legendary and make it orange,
despite that,
or should we call it epic and make it purple? It's a phenomenal game. One of the, as we just said, it's going to be one of our games of the year, undoubtedly. And I truly hope he keeps making more of these games.
Yeah, me too, man.
Because
Tom, please.
I want to know. I want to know what happens more in the story of it. But B, I just want to play another game like this again.
I would love. Yeah, I agree. This game is worth so much more than $20. You can go donate blood to get $20 and buy this game if you have to.
Seriously, though.
All right. So, official verdict. I guess we're calling it epic then.
Epic for now.
I tried, Tom.
Epic for now.
I tried.
We'll come back to it.
Once again,
like whenever we get back to our game of the years, it'll show up again.
Then we'll definitely
it's not like
show
we're
up
going to
again.
forget this game.
We are not going to forget this. No. So, Axiom Verge PS4 coming out tomorrow. Pick it up, $20.
I think it's a little bit of a discount if you're a PS Plus member. I think you get 10% off or something like
Probably, yes.
Well,
I believe that's the
check
thing.
that out.
So, definitely buy it. PS
Don't
Plus members.
sleep on Axiom Verge. Get it. You
Yes.
need to get it.
Actually, yeah. Show your support. Especially, if nothing else, show your support to the indie devs. Like,
Show your support to Tom Happ. Once again, this man made this game alone.
Yeah. As soon as you start playing it, remember that the entire time you're playing it, one person did this.
And then think about what you've done with your damn life.
All right. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to go ahead and peace out here, and we're going to loop in Mr. Tom Happ. It's a pre-recorded interview that we did about a week ago. So, thank you for tuning in. We really hope you enjoyed this. Please go buy Axiom Verge. It's on PS4 tomorrow. Buy it. Okay, here comes the interview. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Tom Happ, the creator of Axiom Verge. Tom, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, so we here at Wundercast, we all loved Axiom Verge. We got lucky enough to get our hands on a review copy, and we've all three played through it. But for everyone that doesn't know what this game is, could you kind of do the elevator pitch for Axiom Verge?
So Axiom Verge is a retro-styled, side-scrolling action-adventure game that kind of harkens back to the classic games of yore. So it's got a mix of action, exploration. It's a sci-fi adventure. Takes inspiration from games like Metroid, Contra, Bionic Commando, Blaster Master, Rygar, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about the genesis of Verge? Like, where did the idea for this game come from? Is it just that you're a big fan of that genre of game?
Originally, it was just a hobby, so I think, it began as me just kind of playing around and trying to figure out what I might want to make, and it was kind of totally up in the air, so I was trying to figure out what were my favorite classic gaming experiences. I had this idea that I might be able to combine the grappling hook from Bionic Commando with the death yo-yo that they have in Rygar, and maybe even work in some of the aspects of Blaster Master there. I didn't specifically want the overhead sections of Blaster Master, but I did like the idea, like how you have the car, and you can get out of the car and walk around on your own, but your car is back where you left it, and that there's kind of different things you can do as the little guy rather than as the vehicle. And I thought that I would do those things with some kind of transforming weapon, which is where the insect weapon came from. That was originally going to be something that kind of could turn from one thing to another. Over time, I kind of found that I didn't really think that was going to be that much fun, and that it wouldn't be. It was actually kind of limiting to say, like, okay, your main weapon is a melee weapon, and it's also your grapple, and there are some things that, by having your grapple be separate from the main weapon, Bionic Commando did really well, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I had it be, for example, like the Rygar yo-yo, you shoot it out in front of you, whereas Bionic Commando kind of elegantly solved it by always having the grapple go at a diagonal. So I decided to go and separate things out, and those just became separate weapons that you eventually find as you travel through the game.
And you mentioned that this game started out as just like a hobby for you. And for anyone that doesn't know, Tom actually made this entire game by himself. which is incredible, especially when you take into account just how big Axiom Verge is. Could you describe your development process a little? And was it a struggle to work on this thing every day?
Not really. I mean, like, the biggest part of it is trying to make sure that you never lose interest in doing it. So, I kind of had to make a large roadmap of, what I wanted to include and, what the milestones were for it. And then, kind of like task myself with making sure I don't, get stuck on any one part and become too bored with any one thing. I began just by doing the art first and then doing the audio before actually doing any like level map design or programming. And that was because I knew that if I got into the rhythm of programming and then had to stop and make the art, it would distract me and, I might veer off course. But if I started programming and all of the art assets were already made and all I had to do was kind of dump them in there, then it would go a lot more smoothly. So that's kind of the way I went about it.
And as long as we're talking about the art direction, I really loved the kind of 16-bit look you had. Was your lack of manpower the contributing factor to go with that look, or are you just a fan of that style?
I'd say I'm more just a fan of that style. The game that I was trying to make before Axiom Verge was going to be a 3D game. I began by starting to model the world in, I don't remember if I was using Maya or 3ds Max, but I have a background in that. The thing is that it does take like quite a bit longer when you have to model all 3 dimensions of an object as opposed to just one, and make sure everything looked good from every angle. It just began to be a big drain. So, that was one of those instances where the day-to-day work became like a drudgery. So, I had to rethink it and think like, well, what is actually like a fun thing to do that you're not going to get tired of? So side-scrolling pixel art fits pretty well into those restrictions because, you only have to draw things from one side. Even if I was to do an isometric game, for those sorts of things, or a Zelda type, you end up you have to draw from like top, bottom, left, right angles in every single wall. So you actually end up having to make 4 times the art assets. And I think what ends up happening a lot of times in those games is there's a lot more repetition to the art just because it all has to be done 4 times. Whereas, if I just do it once in a side scroller, I can put a lot more finesse into any given art asset.
Right. Well, that's incredible for me to hear. I don't know a thing about game development, but I had never even thought of that. For a 3D game, you have to design the art assets that many times.
I'm sure there's things you can do, but when you're doing a 3D game, it's much easier if you have like one person that's just doing nothing but making the models and another person that does nothing but put them into the map kind of thing.
I really loved the boss design that you had in this game. Every time I hopped into a boss room, I was excited to see what this boss was going to look like. They were all really ugly and intimidating immediately, and the way they die when you kill them, the depixelation on the screen and how they burst apart like that it's really cool. What went into making them, and how did you come up with those designs?
Most of the bosses I had the theme, they're kind of like biomechanoid or cyborg mutations. Generally, I just drew a picture and tried to draw something that looked, really cool and vicious. I sort of had in mind, like, I like the bosses in Contra 3 a lot, and, obviously like the bosses in Super Metroid, and maybe a little bit of like the Metal Slug kind of style. I went about trying to just draw a good-looking boss. That worked out well in some cases. In other cases, it meant that I made a drawing that turned out to be something that was just not fun to play against, and then I had to redraw it. I wouldn't say that there was a formula to it.
Axiom Verge is a hard game. Nothing's really handed to you. It doesn't direct the player over here, which I love personally. You're just dropped into the world and it's kind of up to you to figure it out. But how did you play test it and decide when certain parts weren't clear enough or that certain parts were too hard?
I think the only way to do that is really to have other people play it and watch them play. And, you'll see, like certain things like in the very first area, there's a place where you have to use your laser drill and go downwards. I kind of found that, all right, like, you have to make that as obvious as you can so that the player sees that even before, ever coming across the laser drill in the first place. So I ended up having to do some reworking to that so that would be the first room you come across in that first long shaft would be the thing where you drill down. So my thinking was like that's always in the player's mind, like, oh, that one room I couldn't do anything in. When am I going to be able to get there? And then slowly putting more and more things in there in order so that as they come across a thing they can't get past, they shortly after find the thing they're going to use to be able to get past that part. I think in my original design, I just kind of had things like haphazardly, like it wasn't a given that you would see where you were going to use the item before you found it, which I think is one of the kind of more crucial things, is to see those places and make it obvious that that's a thing you need to get through.
I've completed the game, and my map still says I've only found 86% of the world. I've only found like 65% of the in-game items. There's an area in the game right now where I can look at an upgrade, but I have no idea how to access it. It's just so crazy the amount of detail that's in this world that you have, and I don't know if that's even a question, but I wanted to point out just like how incredibly detailed this game is.
Yeah, kind of one of my goals was, to be able to give players that sense of exploration and the sense of things to find, and kind of like stave off that period where you found everything and there's nothing else to do. Try and keep that from happening as long as possible. I think I figured it out last night. I think there's a good like 60% more things to find in this game than were in, say, like Super Metroid. I don't know if the map is 60% bigger. I think it's probably like 15% bigger or something, 20% bigger. So, there's a density of items, and it should keep you busy for a good long while. Or at least, on the first day it comes out before the game FAQ is written on it.
Right. I think I have a little under 20 hours in it, and I'm still only at that percentage complete, which is wild to me. So well done there. But as I said earlier, I have finished the game, and to me, it seems like there could be alternate endings. I don't have anything to back that theory up, but I was wondering, and it's fine if you can't confirm, but I was wondering if you could confirm or deny my suspicions on this.
I'll say that there isn't an alternate ending where it changes the outcome, but there is a couple of Easter eggs that you can acquire for like your post-credits ending. And I'm not going to say how to do them, but you should, if you go through the trophies, come across them.
All right, so that's another thing I loved about this game, too, was the journal entries hidden throughout the game. And when you find them and read them, they really seem to flesh out the story. It really reminds me of like how in Dark Souls, you'll have to search out the lore for yourself to understand what's going on. What were some of your gaming influences that went into creating Axiom Verge as far as the lore was impacted?
So the lore, like originally I had actually thought I would try and convey that kind of thing through dialogue, but I ended up not going in that direction because if I do it during the main process of your gameplay, there's a lot of players, I mean a lot, who really just don't want to hear the dialogue. That's going to penalize them for playing the game if it stops every so often for them to talk and give backstories on who's who and what's going on where. So that left either doing like a lore system, or I was thinking I could do some kind of Phantasy Star 4 had a talk command where you could just have your characters talk and discuss what they're going to do, or it could be like Metal Gear Solid where you can go in and chat any of the characters on your radio at any point. Even then, I found that there were some angles that you would never get because a lot of the characters aren't even among the living by the time the game starts. So I changed it up and I decided to go with the hidden lore. That way it's something for people to find, but for the people who don't like to read, they don't have to read it. If you do find it, then it fleshes things out more for you. So that's about how that went about, and it kind of like helped me to streamline people from having to artificially kind of stuff elements into the dialogue that don't necessarily make sense. So I could add more detail through the notes, and people don't have to read it, but it's there, and they can't claim that I didn't explain something, for example.
Yeah, I'm finding even the journal notes that are in like a different language, and I have no idea what they say. I'm still trying to figure out how to decipher those, and the whole password section of the pause screen, I have no idea what to do with that.
Yeah, as a side note, that password screen in the earliest build was given to you at the start, but it wasn't meant to be. It's actually meant to be an item that you find, and it's kind of an optional item. So it didn't hurt too much that I gave it to you from the start inadvertently, but in the newest patch, it's something that you have to find. So it might make more sense in the context of when you find it and there's a note right there, giving you a passcode to use in it. It's meant to be optional. It can help you find more of the notes and more of those items that you weren't able to get to in the first try.
Moving on from that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the music in the game, because it is just like some of my favorite music I've heard in a really long time. It has the perfect blend of that kind of space sci-fi synth with a bassy undertone and the 16-bit sort of chiptune feel. I really loved is it Erebus? The first section, is that the proper pronunciation?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I really loved that music in particular, but how did you go about setting the tone for a particular area with your music?
So the music, like everything else, I had actually written that before I had designed everything. I had actually made the level maps. I'd made the kind of tile sets, and I knew what the theme of each area was going to be at the time, so I tried to generally fit the music into that. A lot of times when you're writing the music, it turns out to go in some other direction, and I ended up swapping some tracks, and there's actually one track that I ended up not using because it just didn't seem to fit, but I put it on the soundtrack that you'll be able to download on iTunes and Amazon and Bandcamp shortly before launch. I just kind of went with the idea, like I didn't want it to be exactly a chiptune soundtrack. I wanted it to be more than that, kind of like how a chiptune soundtrack might sound in like, a dream that you had of playing a game as opposed to actually playing the game, so.
Moving on from the music, I wanted to talk a little bit about the weapon and the power-up design, which, the amount of gadgets, you were talking earlier that there's roughly 60% more things to collect than in Super Metroid, but the amount of gadgets and tools at the player's disposal is really impressive in Axiom Verge, and it's one of the few games I've played where every time I got a new power-up or a weapon, I was really excited to try them out. How did you come up with all the different abilities and all the different things you wanted to cram into the game?
Man, I don't know. I have to say, I really don't know. I kind of had that general theme of, early on in the game, you get the glitch ray and you can glitch enemies. So a lot of what I was trying to do was keep it with that same theme. So in terms of the fiction, trying to make abilities that fit with that and made sense in that context.
All right. Well, I think that does it for the questions. The game is Axiom Verge. You can pick it up on PS4 in North America March 31st. And I guess if you're in Europe, you're out of luck until April 1st. But Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really cool talking to you.
Well, thank you.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Video Game Wundercast. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, keep on gaming.